Okay, so we're going to start off with our bolster. So we just take our bolster and plant it behind us. If you do have a block, you absolutely could prop your bolster up on the block like this, but we don't have to. It can be perfectly flat as well. We scooch the hips right up, like so. We draw the soles of the feet together. And then when you feel comfortable too, we slowly peel, like so. Lovely. If you feel comfortable here, then you might play around with maybe holding the opposing elbow and releasing the arms back as well. If that feels a little bit too much, then you might feel more comfortable with the arms wide and down by your side. This will still have a lovely opening effect through the chest, through the shoulders, which will begin to tap into the heart and lung meridians. Now, in our yin practice, we would like to begin to physically relax. This means the muscles that would usually be switched on in maybe a yang practice, muscles that would intuitively switch on to protect these deep tissues of the body, we encourage them to gently relax down. The hips, glutes, the thighs, all of the muscles from the belly button down to the feet are going to become very soft, very relaxed, just surrendering down with the pose, melting heavily. It's normal for your mind to wander, especially at the start of our class. Often we bring the body into this yin-like state where it's perfectly still, disengaged, free from resistance, and just surrendering down. But the mind or the energy are still in that yang-like state. Therefore, there's this juxtaposition that can be quite uncomfortable. There is a changing of state as we gently allow more and more of ourselves to shift into that yin-like essence, both of which can be really uncomfortable or feel a little bit unfamiliar. We allow ourselves just to trust that allowing ourselves to be non-doing, allowing ourselves just to exist in stillness is one of the most productive things we can do for our emotional body, for our cognitive function, encouraging that flow through the meridian body, for balancing our yin-yang energies, for improving our range of motion and our deep yin tissues. There's so many benefits that we can get from simply allowing ourselves to exist in stillness. When you're feeling ready, as slowly as you can, we gently walk the legs back together, and we're just going to send the legs long. If the arms are up and overhead or out by your side, just draw them down by your side here so they're a little bit closer to your body. You can even place them on your tummy or around by your waist. This is known as a counterpose. We do these for many reasons. One is that we can allow the parts of the physical body that we've just been really deeply stretching and targeting the range of motion in that area. We just allow it to come back to its natural and neutral position. This in turn allows the skeleton to just reset, feeling a bit more comfortable. It allows our awareness to travel towards the sensations we can feel in that area whilst we're completely still. But our main reason for our counterposes are to encourage a flow of energy in the area that we've just targeted. Through that simple falling open of the legs, we've targeted 4 of the lower body meridians. The liver, kidney, stomach and spleen, all which run through the outer, front and inner thigh. So here we're just allowing ourselves to create this clear pathway for energy to flow freely through. Well done. Whenever you're feeling ready, we're slowly going to move our bolster away. So we make our way up. We just pop our bolster to the side. We move the block if we did have one. And we make our way back down into a supine position. We're going to draw the left leg up towards us and hook the biggest toe if we feel comfortable to. If this feels a little bit out of reach, to place the index and middle finger around the big toe, then you might feel more comfortable placing the entire hand on the outer foot. If that feels a bit too much as well, then you might grab a belt and hook it around the foot, or interlace if we don't have a belt. So once you found your hand position, toe hook, a foot hook, a belt hook, or interlacing behind the back of the thigh, then we begin to settle down. You could extend that right leg long if that feels right for you. This will enhance that sensation through the inner hip flexors, through the inner thigh and through the groin. You might begin to allow that left leg to fall to the left hand side. Happy baby is an amazing pose for beginning to target all these deep yin tissues. To target the stomach meridian, the kidney and liver meridians, all of which relate to feelings of contentment, joy and safety, letting go and release, bravery. And it's thought that all meridians have positive and negative emotions, like a spectrum, and that when we have blockages, which can arise in the form of trapped emotions, tension in the body which blocks the natural flow of energy through the energy body, areas of stagnancy, blockages, anything like that, that we can begin to feel these certain emotions in excess or lack. When we're practicing yin, we don't have to set an intention to release away emotions. We don't have to do anything at all. All we need to do is hold the pose in stillness, release and relax the muscles, and allow yourself to step into that state of consciousness, free from the ego, free from the identity, Free from the parts of yourself which always help in day-to-day life, throughout conversations, throughout decisions. Yet when we come to the mat, we just give those aspects of ourselves this chance to rest. We allow ourselves to return to a state of being rather than doing. When you're feeling ready, slowly slide your right leg up towards you and take your right leg into your right hand. We're not staying in full happy baby. We are going to slowly transition into half happy baby on the other side. Take your time how you make your way there. So you might drop that left leg first and then drop the arms. You might work on how we hook the foot. Find out what feels comfortable for you. Make sure the back feels comfortable. And then when you feel ready, you might send that left leg long. But be really mindful with how and when we send that leg long. Always moving slowly when we do move. This left leg you could place over on the bottom left corner of your mat for an even more intense sensation through that inner hip flexor. Allow a heaviness throughout your entire body. When we allow the body to enter into a state of relaxation, state of surrender, state of stillness, it's thought that in time the mind will follow. We place no pressure on when we arrive there. We place no expectation on ourselves to be a certain way, to be relaxed or happy or zen or yin. We just allow ourselves to exist exactly as we are, full of acceptance, just allowing whatever is to be without the need to change anything or do anything. This becomes easier as the class progresses for many reasons, but mostly because the body and the mind are very interconnected. And by simply placing the body in these still positions, eventually the mind will begin to enter into that yin-like state as well. What started off as maybe quite uncomfortable, that silence at the present moment and that stillness of the practice, can become really enjoyable, really necessary. And we can begin to crave that stillness and the silence of just existing and being without the pressure to do anything, without the responsibility to respond to thoughts that arise, to react or interact, to decide yes or no, to identify with or reject thoughts. We just allow ourselves to be. When you're ready, slowly send that leg long. We allow ourselves just to be in this nice counterpose here, just for a moment, where the legs are long, they're falling outwards. Everything's heavy. It's really normal for the mind to wander, especially in your counter poses. Often when we practice, we have the sensations to focus on, which is why we always want the intensity to be around a 7 out of 10. And then when we come into the counterpose, there's this release and relax, and the sensations dissipate. Even though they dissipate into a subtleness, if we hone our awareness in on the area that we've just targeted, you'll still be able to feel these very, very subtle energy movements throughout your hips, throughout your thighs, and throughout your knees. So we just allow our awareness to rest on these areas. And similarly to how the silence can give volume to thoughts that arise, even if before they would have been muffled by the sounds of the rest of our internal conversation. The same can be said for the sensations that we feel. The stillness of the body can highlight these really gentle energy movements. Sometimes it can feel like movement, like blood flow, like heartbeat, breath flow. Sometimes it can feel like warmth or coolness, like liquid. Sometimes it can feel like a dispersing or a dissipating. Just really allow yourself to be present for as much of the practice as you can. And we do this by just observing the sensations we feel, the breath that we're taking, the thoughts that we're experiencing. Whenever you're feeling ready, we're going to move into our next pose, and this is our cat pulling its tail. So we have a few options here. Option 1 is lifting the right leg up towards you and just taking twisted roots pose. Nothing too intense here, just really gentle. And you decide how you fall into this. You could even put a bolster underneath this leg so that you don't fall too deep. Option 2, rather than keeping this leg bent, we straighten it and then we drop it all the way over towards the left side of the room. You then bend your left leg and hold it in your right hand. Left arm comes out by your side, and we allow the heart space to naturally open up towards the sky. Now, this is a really intense position. With the left leg extended and falling over, we're naturally targeting all the way down through that outer thigh. With this left leg bent, we're targeting through the inner hip flexor, the front of the thigh, and it's also creating this deep bend through the lumbar spine. We then have that twist and opening of the heart space, which targets through the gallbladder meridian. So overall, it's quite intense and it won't be for everyone. So if you feel more comfortable in the bent leg variation with your left leg long, that's absolutely fine. Allow yourself to be heavy, to be switched off. If you need to take a bit of a variation, like bending the right leg or propping the right leg up in cat pulling its tail, you absolutely can. If you want to keep the right leg extended but you don't want to bend the left leg, again, absolutely fine. In yin, we allow ourselves to respond to how the body feels in that moment. We honor our body and we show our body equal amounts of compassion and discipline. This allows us to achieve that 7 out of 10. If 5 was far too gentle of a stretch and 10 was far too intense, we don't want the pose to feel so gentle that the mind can just wander away. But we don't want the pose to feel so intense that all we can think about is when the pose will be over. Make sure that you're still breathing deeply. Sometimes when we take twist poses, because the tummy is gently compressed, it can mean that we begin to breathe more shallow, which can stimulate the mind to wander faster. But we want to keep ourselves in that state of yin, where the body is completely relaxed. And the mind is completely still. The breath is slow and full. When you're feeling ready, slowly bend your right leg and move yourself back through center. And for our counter pose, we're going to draw the feet wide and the knees together. You might want to extend the legs a little bit further away if you find that your knee would like a bit more of a counter pose. But overall, the feet coming wide and the knees coming together is going to create this release for your lumbar spine. We close down the eyes, we still the pupils, we slow the breath. A lot of our yin practice is simply about destimulating the mind, sending signals to the nervous system that we're safe, that we can relax down, that the mind doesn't have to be on high alert. And we do this through stilling the pupils, slowing the breath, relaxing the muscles, stilling the body, releasing physical tension through stretch. Do this through switching off external stimulus, which is why we practice in silence. It's absolutely fine to experience sounds both far and near. They simply become part of that present moment experience. We observe them. We practice that habit of observing free from judgment, and then allow our awareness to settle back on the next present moment. When you're feeling ready, we're going to move on to the other side. So we either send the right leg long and guide that left leg into your twisted roots pose, or we extend the leg and draw it over towards the other side, and then bend your right leg, taking it into your left hand. Your right arm can rest down by your right hand side. And we begin to switch off the muscles one by one. It's absolutely fine to prop your left leg, up on a block or a bolster. If you find it difficult to keep hold of this right leg, then you can grab a belt and hook that right foot. We allow ourselves to continually scan through the body, as it's quite common for muscles to begin to resist the pose. And it's thought that when there is resistance, there is discomfort in all senses, not just in the physical body, but also within the mind, within the emotions, within the energy. When we hold resistance to anything, it becomes uncomfortable. We don't need to make ourselves act a certain way. We don't have to intentionally release away this resistance if we have any in the mind. We simply physically release resistance, physically melt down, relax, and switch off, and trust that in time the mind will follow suit. We allow ourselves to continually enter into that state of non-doing, where we just observe. Yin is like a moving meditation, meaning all we need to do is observe the present from a state of consciousness. The only difference in Yin is that we are holding poses and we're moving every few minutes. Whereas in traditional seated meditation, you might be seated for the whole practice. In Yin, we're releasing tensions from the physical body, which can distract us or make thoughts float up into our head, which is fine. We just allow ourselves to make note that we are experiencing a thought. We observe the thought without interaction. We, the observer, are still, and we allow the thought itself to be still, meaning we don't continue on with the thought, adding energy to it. We don't trace the conversation back, trying to work out why we had the thought. We just allow it to exist in our present moment, similarly to how the sensations we feel exist in the present moment. It's all simply part of your present moment experience. When we allow thoughts to exist like this without pushing them away and without pulling them in, they begin to lose weight or intensity. Some thoughts you might need to sit with for longer. Essentially, we're not attaching any meaning to what we observe. When we're ready, we release both legs into a bend and we come back into our counterpose. We flatten the spine, tuck the tailbone very slightly up, and draw the knees together, feet wide, for a lovely counterpose. It's normal for the mind to wander here, so just give yourself that time and that space to be still. The more the practice progresses, often the easier this becomes. Allow your awareness to hone in on the sensations you feel, those subtle energy movements, whether they feel cool or warm. Allow your muscles to continually relax down here. It's quite common in counter poses to begin to subconsciously switch on the muscles, resisting the ground. Just soften and allow gravity to sink you as deeply as you can. In around 10 seconds, we're going to move into a position on our front. When we move as slowly as we can, as mindfully as we can. So when you're ready, just gently you step the legs in, move in ways that feel intuitive to you. You roll onto one side, onto our front. We tuck the toes underneath the body, and we're going to come into our child pose toe tuck. Now we can do this with our forehead resting on stacked fists, like so. Or if you're feeling like this is actually quite okay, then you absolutely could do the kneeling version. However, it is quite intense. If we do the kneeling version, you might feel more comfortable with a blanket underneath your knees. Whichever you choose, we're here for 1.5 minutes. So initially you'll start to feel your toes, your heels, the base of the feet really, really intensely. We allow ourselves to remain soft. If we're in the forward folding child's pose variation, it can feel a little bit easier to switch off the muscles, to become heavy. We're finishing with this toe tuck pose because it enables us to target all 6 of the lower body meridians. Through gently opening the base of the foot, through targeting every single toe, the center of the foot, we should notice that what started off feeling extremely intense is probably dissipated into quite an enjoyable pose. So it's time to come into our final pose before Savasana. So we draw our arms out in front. We draw the knees until we stack underneath your hips. And we release our heart space down towards the floor. You might drop your forehead down for a traditional Anahatanasana, or you might plant your chin down and look forwards. Do what feels right for you. Anahatanasana translates to open heart pose, or melting heart pose rather. So we're just really letting the chest drop with gravity. But as a secondary effect, we'll probably feel this gentle compression through the lumbar spine. That compression allows us to target and stimulate through the bladder meridian, which when out of harmony relates to feelings of fear. It's thought that the body and the mind are completely interconnected. The body and the emotional body, the body and the energy body. So that whilst when feeling an emotion, we can begin to feel physical tension or physical discomfort over time. By physically targeting that area, we can release that emotion. We can allow it to arise in our consciousness. And by simply shining a light on thoughts, feelings, emotions, this gives us the awareness, which in turn gives us that power to choose. to choose whether we respond in love or fear, which is thought to be our two options. It's thought that all reactions that come from the ego, the identity, come from either love or fear. When you're feeling ready, we press into the hands and we walk ourselves back up and onto our back. Really using your hands and your arms to come back down. And we're coming into our Savasana. This is our final pose. We just allow ourselves to be heavy. Allow yourself to switch off physically for maybe the last time today. Your legs can be wherever feels right for you. And the arms. The head rests down. And we completely switch off. We allow that same stillness in the mind. As we allow in the body. When the mind does wander, we slowly draw it back. The same slowness that we allow in the breath. By just observing where it wandered to, with gentleness and compassion. We don't need to push the thought away and return to complete silence, but we simply don't pull the thought in and interact with it. We allow it to exist as part of our present moment experience, something that we, the observer, are experiencing. The observer is non-attached to the body, the emotions. The emotions are simply a communicator, a translator of the energy of the thought and whether it aligns with you. When we observe from this pure consciousness, free from emotion, where all that exists is acceptance, allowing, compassion, creates a safe haven for thoughts that might not have been accepted before to arise. Meaning that silence is challenged. We often will have thoughts arise that feel heavier, things that we hold in our body might arise, such as random feelings of guilt or anger. When these feelings arise, again, we don't push them away. There is no good or bad. There is no right or wrong. We don't identify with or reject anything that arises. We just acknowledge and accept that this this is part of our present moment experience. And we observe in stillness, like shining a spotlight on all these intricate, subtle parts of ourselves. When you're feeling ready, we slowly draw both legs into a bend and hug them in towards you. We slowly rock onto one side and make our way up into your comfortable upright position. Namaste.